Belgium Jewish community. We've already done a part 1 morning, we'll do part 2, maybe there'll be a part 3 and part 4 in due course with regards to some of the rabbis. Today I'm not going to speak about the channel over here, so welcome everyone as we're speaking of the history of the country Belgium. Now, we spoke about pre-World War II in the previous video, if you recollect. Now I want to speak a bit more about the demographics of the community, how it would evolve in during the Second World War, and maybe about a few rabbis. And hopefully in the third video we will do a much longer video, maybe speaking about the synagogues and notable rabbis and notable personalities. Okay, so prior to the Second World War, at its peak, I think the Jewish community of Belgium was around 70,000 Jewish people, which is very interesting. Half of them, about 35%, would actually live in Antwerp, and as many as 25,000 people in Brussels, which is a huge amount compared especially to now. I think about 22,000 Jews at the time were German Jewish refugees, and only about 6% of the Jewish population were of Belgian nationality. So Belgium was occupied by Nazi Germany between May 1940 and September 1944. And there was obviously very anti-Semitic policies would come about, were adopted throughout Belgium, even though I think there was popular resistance in some cities. I think that would hinder, let's say, their full application. Now, the Belgian local police rounded up Jews, and I believe on 3 occasions in Antwerp, if I'm not mistaken, they would assist the Germans in fulfilling their terrible, disgraceful policies towards Jews. Approximately 45% of the Belgian Jews, which was the number given here is 25,484 people, deported into concentration camps from Dostin barracks in Mechelen, primary to Auschwitz. And I think only 1,200 of the deportees, unfortunately, only very few would survive war. And the Committee for Jewish Defense, which I think worked with national resistance movement called the Front that Led Independence, was the largest Jewish, I believe, defense at that stage in time movement in Belgium, I think, during the war. Now, some Belgian Jews who fled Belgium, I think in 1940, were deported on transports from Drancy, France. Now, I think a total of 28,000 of Belgium and Brussels. I think more than 20,000 names of Belgians, some of whom were killed, I think, on Belgian territory, but many of whom were shipped off to death camps and executed in East. It's reported over. Okay, friends, we are speaking about the history of Belgian Jewish community here. I think reported over, at the moment there's about 29,000 Jews in Belgium, which is much lower than it was. The Jewish community of Antwerp is as many as 20,000, and it's one of the single largest Jewish communities in Europe. Now, one of the places in the world where Yiddish is a primary language, which is not that common over here, mirroring, let's say, certain Orthodox Hasidic communities in New York, in London, and in Israel. I think it's a very high percentage, 95% of Jewish children will receive a Jewish education, which is one of the highest proportions in of itself. And in contemporary Belgium, 5 Jewish newspapers and more than 45 active synagogues exist. As many as 30 are in Antwerp. Now, I think anti-Semitic incidents, unfortunately, has gone up in the years all over the place. I think the GTA would report the incidents in 2012 to be was the highest since 2009, and I think it increased, if I'm not mistaken. And I think there were physical attacks, if I'm not mistaken. I think October 2013, someone named Isai Liebler, who was a former president of the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, reported on the alarming increase in levels of anti-Semitism in Belgium. He described a wide use, let's just say, of anti-Semitic characters in the media, let's say, that would actually come on over there at that point in time. And very sad. I think there were various surveys that we do at that point in time among 8 Jewish communities. In 8 European countries, 88% of Belgian Jews feel that in course of recent years, anti-Semitism has intensified in their country. That's what this reported. I think it was around the time period of the 2010s, if I'm not mistaken. Let's explore about a few famous Belgian personalities, Jewish personalities over here. One person is Max Berenblatt, also known as Menachem Banit. He lived between 1914, he was born in Antwerp. He died on February 24th, 2007 in Israel. He was a Belgian-Israeli scholar of medieval, of French culture and language, and internationally acclaimed expert on Russian. I think he was known for his analysis of Rashi's, let's say, occasional translation of words and phrases from Hebrew or Aramaic to Old French, written in, let's say, phonetically Hebrew letters. He was born, he was about 92 years of age when he passed away. He knew Judeo-French, he was an expert with it. He would win an Israel Prize in 1999, and he was also honored as an officer of the Ordre des Palmes Academiques, also is another, let's say, a prominent accolade he would have over there. Let's explore a bit with regards to the history of the Jews of Antwerp over here in this thing. Now, Antwerp is a major, let's say, Jewish center in Belgium. It goes back at least 800 years plus. Jewish life was first recorded in the city in the high Middle Ages, but I think the Jewish population will grow and obviously wane over the years. I think Antwerp had a thriving Jewish community of 35,000 people, with many Jews connected to the city's diamond industry. The Nazi occupation of Antwerp from 1940 and the Holocaust would decimate the city's Jewish population. By the time of Antwerp's liberation, I think this was in September 1944, the Jewish population had fallen to just 1,200 people. It was over there. I think since then, Antwerp's Jewish community has rebounded to become a major European centre, let's say, of ultra-Orthodox, especially Hasidic communities, and various Orthodox Jewish communities also. And Antwerp is now one of only two cities in Europe, together with London, that's home to, let's say, a considerable ultra-Orthodox population in the 21st century. I think come 2018, there was around 20,000 ultra-Orthodox Jews living in Antwerp, of which around half of it, 10,000, are classified as Hasidic. Okay, let's explore a bit about the early history with regards to that. The establishment of the Jewish community in the region of, let's say, Flanders is considered to be in 1022, right, about nearly years ago. I think it was when Baldwin, I think the fourth, he was a count of Flanders, invited Jacob Bar, Jacuthiel, and 30 other Jews from Rouen to settle in Arras. The first official document that refers to the Jewish community in Antwerp itself is the will of Henry III, the Duke of Brabant, who I think in 1261 expressed his wish that the Jews of Brabant should be expelled on account of their, let's say, status as usurers. That's what he claimed, anti-Semitism. While the community was not ultimately expelled, taxes were increased on them, and in the following century, in 1348, the Jews of Antwerp and other major cities in the region were accused of poisoning wells and were harshly punished for this. Obviously, it wasn't true. And many of them being hanged, burned at the stake, beaten to death, or drowned. You can see the disgraceful anti-Semitism there was all throughout, unfortunately. I think it may be that many of the Jews who helped establish Antwerp as a communal hub in the Low Countries were refugees from places like England and France. Now, a new group of Jewish immigrants started to settle, I think, in Antwerp in the early part of the 16th century, when the city became a relatively safe haven for crypto Jews. Obviously, there was persecutions, expulsions in the Iberian Peninsula. There was treacherous, tenuous presence was maintained for the next century and a half. Because I think Jews were not allowed to acquire citizenship, and I think persecution was common under Spanish rule, and many Jews were expelled. Some returned, let's say, after the peace of Westphalia over there. So very, very interesting enough. Friends, anyone tuning in live, we're exploring the history of the Belgian Jewish community, so please subscribe to the channel if you're new here at the moment. Let's talk about the 19th century here in Antwerp. It was not until 1794, and with obviously there was arrival of the French Revolution, that Jewish people could settle freely in Antwerp again. Let's say there was pursuant to Napoleon's imperial decree of the 20th of July 1808, Jewish people throughout areas under French rule, which I think included Antwerp, were forced to acquire fixed first names and let's say family names, which were forbidden to be from the Hebrew Bible. The current Jewish community of Antwerp, I think, was officially established in 1816, when I think there were about 100 Jews living in the city. This, let's say, the first legally recognized community was known as a Jewish community obviously in French, let's say communal Israelis. And the first Jewish public prayers were held at a private home. Someone named Moise Crane. He received the approval of the city authorities. Now the Jews of Antwerp would acquire possessions of a cemetery, I think in 1828. And there were 151 Jews living in Antwerp in 1829. Let's talk a bit about the Holocaust. Unfortunately, the horrors. On the eve of World War II, there was 50,000 Jews inside Antwerp, many connected to the diamond industry, and there was a lively Jewish culture. Various organizations, sports clubs, very let's say Zionistic groups there were. And when Belgium was liberated in 1944, only 800 Jewish people were left over there at that stage in time. During the Second World War, 65% of the city's Jews perished in the Holocaust, versus 35% of the Jews in Brussels. On April the 14th, 1941, there was a so-called Antwerp pogrom. It occurred when some 200 followers of the Vlaams National Verbond, or the Flemish National Union, you could say, or Volkswaring, in People's Defense, Anti-Jewish League, and other, let's say, pro-Nazi, anti-Semitic groups burned 2 synagogues in the Oostenstraat. They smashed windows of Jewish-owned shops, damaged religious symbols, and harassed the Jewish population. At that point in time, you can see the terrible anti-Semitism there was at that stage in time. And in come up May to September 1942, some 1,500 Jewish men from Antwerp were taken into forced labour in northern France, building the Atlantic Hall for the organisation TOT. And I think from the end of July until November 1942, on 3 occasions, Jews in Antwerp were rounded up by the Germans with the collaboration of local police. From a community of around 35,000 Jews in Antwerp before the war, some 15,000 would remain in the city after 1945. So that's very, very interesting. Now, let's talk about the current Jewish community a bit more in Antwerp. I think it's between 20 to 25,000 members. Majority, obviously, are Orthodox Jewish people, many ultra-Orthodox, many Hasidish, if I'm not mistaken. They live concentrated in the city area, I'd say south of the Antwerp Central Railway Station. This neighbourhood is also known as Jewish Antwerp. Its main attraction is its close proximity to the Diamond Bourse, where I think in earlier days a large part of the community worked. I think it's also where Jewish schools are. There's kosher food outlets there, and general Jewish amenities are actually located in this part. Now, the Jewish community in the 21st century. Now, obviously, this, so very, very interesting. Let's speak about other famous rabbis over here that were in Antwerp, or Belgium, including Rabbi Chaim Kreiswith. Remember, in the next session, we're going to speak more about the rabbis in the synagogue. Who was Rabbi Chaim Kreiswith? He lived between 1918 to 2001. He was a long-time chief rabbi of the congregation Machzekei Hadat, Antwerp in Belgium, and was a founder of Rosh Yeshiva Merkaz Torah Yeshiva in Jerusalem, and was highly regarded Torah scholar there. Merkaz Torah is a yeshiva we visited before in Jerusalem. He was born in Poland. He died in Jerusalem. He was about 82, 83 years old. His father was Rabbi Abraham Yosef Shnuma. Yes, so his mother's name was Rabbanit Perla, and he would study for many years in Poland and in Lithuania, including the Chachmei Lublin Yeshiva. I think Rabbi Chaim Ozer Grudzinski and Rabbi Henoch Elgis warmly recommended his manuscript on Tractate Tzvachim, which we happen to be on at the moment, which was lost during the Holocaust, and he received a rabbinic ordination from Rabbi Hanoch Heinrich Eiges, I believe, at that point in time. Now, post-World War II, Rabbi Kreiswith returned to Poland in an attempt to rescue the Jewish children who were sheltered by the Catholic Church for the war's duration. In 1947, he moved to the United States of America. From 1947 to 1953, he served as a Rosh Yeshiva at the Hebrew Theological College in Chicago. 1953, he moved to Antwerp in an effort to rebuild the Jewish community. And the move was based on the counsel of the famous Chazon Ish and the Amshinova Rebbe. And Rabbi Kreiswith would become the Abbot in the head of Jewish courts, and a posek, a halachic decider, a Jewish law decider in Antwerp, and was active, I think, in Agudat, Israel, respectively. Let's talk about the Sephardic community of Brussels, a bit of history. I think they've got a very long and storied history. Well before the First World War and prior to any official recognition, I think there was a number of Sephardic Jewish families immigrated from Ottoman Empire to Brussels, and they established a small but vibrant community. I think at the turn of the 20th century, it was obviously initially a very tiny community, will begin to flourish, expand rapidly during the Great Depression due to a major influx of Jews from Turkey, Greece, Thessaloniki, Istanbul, and Izmir. Very interesting enough, so it would really boost the community. I think by the late 1950s and early 1960s, the community became dominated by Sephardim from the island of Rhodes in Greece, who had originally immigrated to the Belgian Congo, South Rhodesia, today's Zimbabwe, and South Africa at the beginning of the 20th century for business opportunities in the rubber trade. There were sizable communities, and the colonization of Central Africa and Belgium's direct colonial ties to Congo and use of French language. Many of these Sephardim ended up in Brussels, in Belgium. They helped to revive the community after the Holocaust. In Belgium, nearly 25,000 Jews, unfortunately, in the country were deported by the Nazis to Auschwitz during the war. I think in 2007, the community inaugurated a new synagogue named the Simon and Lena Haim Synagogue in the predominantly Jewish neighborhood of Ilkel, and they moved closer to its members. Today, I think they're the largest active Jewish congregation in Brussels, more than 350 member families, and half of which have Turkish and Rhodesi heritage. There's cultural programs, I think, engaging with the wider Belgian society, including Ladino courses they do, led by someone named President Mike Cohen, and the community is very active in weekly Shabbat services, cultural programs, youth activities, and they have an active rabbi, hopefully we'll speak about. And now a key rabbi connected to Belgium, let's point out someone named Rabbi Moise Levy. He lived between 1915 and 2003. Now, of course, he lived about 88 years. He was a Sephardic Jewish rabbi. He was part of the Jewish community in the modern-day Democratic Republic of Congo for 53 years. He was born in 1915 in Antalya, part of the Ottoman Empire. He grew up on the island of Rhodes, and that was under Italian control at the time. He would study his rabbinical studies over there. When he was 22 years of age, he was ordained as a rabbi, and he would leave Rhodes for the Belgian Congo, which is obviously modern-day Democratic Republic of Congo, where a small Jewish community composed mostly of Sephardic Jews from Rhodes had settled in Elizabethville, which is obviously modern-day Lubumbashi. He became the first rabbi in Congo, I think, in 1937. And in 1953 was named the chief rabbi of the Belgian Congo, Rwanda and Northern Rhodesia. He organized tefillot prayers, rites of passage, and maintained Jewish life, I believe, in the area. In the event of dispute, let's say, between members of the community, he would serve as a mediator. He would keep peace among people. And I think his judgments were accepted as final, which would avoid having to involve colonial administration, which obviously would not have been ideal. We can add on a bit more within regards to him. I think the rabbi built a sphere of influence far outside his community in southern Congo. During the colonial period, provincial governors regularly consulted him. I think he reported that he had an audience with King Leopold III and King Badwin. And when the colony became independent, I think in 1960, Katanga province attempted to secede from the country. Now, someone named Moise Chombe was a leader of the state of Katanga at that point in time, remembered the rabbi for ruling in its favor during a dispute in his youth. Following the rise of the Mabuto Sese Seko and the creation of Zera in 1965, Rabbi Levi continued to have very good relations with the local authority, named the National Order of the Leopold. And obviously there was a collapse of Zera in the first Congo in the 1991. Rabbi Levi decided to leave the country for Belgium, where he retired of yesteryear from Belgium, actually recording this journey at the moment from the city of Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, where we've gone all the way to the city of Bet Shemesh at the moment. We spoke about various chief rabbis that we have to point out. We're going to speak more about individual rabbis in the next class, which something to look forward to. Very much so, so I recommend everyone to listen to the first part of the series. I think we spoke about 8 different chief rabbis. I want to speak about the synagogues of Belgium in the next video also, which hopefully we're going to do probably at some stage in the next week that is coming. So including among the chief rabbis from 1832 was Eliakim Karmoli, Dr. Henry Lowe, Rabbi Eli Aristad Abstruk, Rabbi Jacques Henry Dreyfus, Rabbi Armand Bloch, Rabbi Ernest Grinsberger, Rabbi Joseph Weiner, Rabbi Dr. Solomon Ullman, And there were various other rabbis also, so we have to point out. Now, a key rabbi, as we mentioned about yesterday, was Rabbi Moise Kasola, who we spoke about beforehand. He was born actually in 1913. He died in 1990. He was about 76 years of age. He's actually buried in Kiryat Shaul, if I'm not mistaken. He was also a rabbi in France. He received a rabbinic education in Jewish Theological Seminary in Sarajevo and the Rabbinic Seminary in France, I believe. He was a Talmud Rabbi Moritz Levi and Rabbi Mordechai Ziv Orbach, I believe. Great rabbis. He was a famous rabbi in both Bosnia and Serbia, we have to point out. And from Kingdom of Serbia he was from. He actually learned in Talmud Torah when he was young. And I think he was quite close to Rabbi Solomon Gaon, who would later on become a chief rabbi of the Spanish-Portuguese community in England. So I think there was a famous, you would learn in famous Beit Midrash Rabbanim in France, I believe, and various different, he was quite close to various other people, including David Freiberger, if I'm not mistaken, and any other rabbis. I think he was chief rabbi in Toulouse, in France, and that was that time period of the Second World War. So, and then I think between 1940s and 1942, he would work as a rabbi of the Jewish community in Belgium, I believe, in the Varna Square, if I'm not mistaken, over there also took on various different important positions. That's something we have to point out over here. Okay, friends, I think we're going to leave the part 2 over here. Wishing you all a great day. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and join our community.